Before I open up, a special announcement. We're this event today will be in a memory of an incredible pioneer in the world of wholesale that I'd like to mention. A dear friend of mine, Jamie Katz, is the daughter of Mr. Ben Dweck, and I think it's apropos in thinking about this today that 70 years ago, 70 years ago, he went to Japan and started the company. And he was a pioneer in the consumer electronic industries and in licensing and in branding and in product and in so many things, and a philanthropist. So Jamie, who has the world's turns, worked with me about a decade ago, and she's incredible, as she always is, and I hope she's watching and listening, because I promised I'd say hi. Her family has come forward. Jamie has come forward to sponsor some of our events, and I just wanted to give a shout out to Jamie and our family, and thank you on behalf of Exceed Network, and also to Ben Dweck for trailblazing this incredible world 70 years later, where we're sitting talking about wholesale today. So today's managing risk will be hot topics that are going on as we speak. Eli Yedid and Isaac Wolman, we're talking about some of the things that they'll apprise you of today. And Eli Yedid has been spearheading this event the last 4 or 5 months, and tip my hat off to Eli. He's a board member, very actively involved. I sort of brought someone in who never says no to me, Isaac Wolman, who runs a incredible toy company, but on the world of chesed. He started the Jewish entrepreneur, and I've known him for many years, and also formed an umbrella organization called TribeWorks. He's really, like I say, on a mission from God, a very special friend, and I'm sure going to add a lot of value. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Eli Yedid and Isaac Wolman.
Thank you, Erwin. I have to start by pointing out that a huge mentor of mine showed his face on the screen, and I haven't seen him in many years. Bob Tucci.
Bob Tucci's on the screen?
I don't believe. One of a legend in business, and the fact that he tuned in is extraordinary. So Bob, I thought
please, can I unmute? Because I'm not in wholesale. I own many businesses, but I want to give so much respect first to Jackie Bennon, who grew up a block away from me, who was an extraordinary gentleman. And because Eli Yedid is like the second son I never had. Erwin is my brother Michael's best friend. Wow. But Eli Yedid to me is Dee, and his mother, Sandy, my first cousin. I'm sorry, second cousin. Yeah. So I came on only because I saw who's on here today. So that's it for now.
It's a very special treat. Thank you, Bob.
No, thank you so much.
Special treat. Very special treat. Thank you for tuning in.
I want to learn from all these guys. I just want to say one other thing, please. When Eli was a young guy, he was at our house all the time, and my son Isaac was at his house all the time. And I used to eat him up when he was a kid. He doesn't remember. I used to eat him up, squeeze him, but he had a body that was so strong, he was like a brick wall, right? Dee?
Absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Absolutely.
So I just had to be on here and say hi to everybody. Now you guys continue. Thank you. Thank you for the courtesy.
But I couldn't. He's
Bobby, great to see you, Bob.
Yeah, good to see
Thank you. Thanks for the courtesy.
Hi, Jack. Okay, let's start the show.
So we'll begin by, first of all, discussing how diverse we've become. We have our first Ashkenaz panelist. So we want to, we want to open the floor to other communities. So thank you for joining us, Isaac. He also comes with a different realm of consumer products that we're not accustomed to in our community as much. He's in the toy business. He'll get into that. But I wanted to just start out by saying that we're going to go through a bunch of topics. Some of them are licensing, the tariff drawbacks, the renminbi exchange. We're going to talk about currency fluctuations. We're going to talk about the credit market. We're going to talk about international business scaling. We're going to talk about opportunities. So we'll go one by one over it. But the last thing that I want to do is talk for an hour and have Isaac talk for an hour and a half. we want to hear from you. We could very easily fill our time talking, but the key to this series that we've been successful with is hearing from you and getting like sort of a scoop talk and understanding what your specific issues today are. So we'll hopefully have some volunteers with, there's no questions that are, dumb questions, so don't be shy. We want to hear from you. So that's kind of what I want to say. We also want to thank our sponsor, Day Capital, which we'll get into. Alfred, Jack, and Ezra, thank you for sponsoring our event. And without further ado, Isaac, say a couple of words, please.
Hey, really nice to meet all of you. I have to say I really enjoyed that little parlay in the beginning. I think that was the most Jewish start to a webinar that I've seen in a long time. So I really enjoyed that. That was fantastic. Thank you, Eli. Thank you, Erwin. It's an honor for me, and I know that I'm in really good company here. I see Jeff Pinsker on here as well. Jeff is somebody that I've looked up to for a long time, so I'm just going to put that out there as well. Like I said, I'm really curious to hear whatever questions you all have. I'll do the best I can to put out all the information, all the knowledge that I've built up over the few years I've been in business. One thing I'd like to say is that anybody who has any questions for me or in any way that I can help them, perhaps with an introduction to a retailer or any questions about, you're welcome to reach out to me afterwards as well. I'll ask Molly to put out my email address on the Skype chat. So please feel free, if there's anything I didn't cover or if there's anything I can help you with personally, feel free to reach out and we can schedule a time to talk afterwards. I've been in the toy and gift business for about 12 years now. I formerly owned a distribution company that sold primarily in the United States, but I currently own a toy company. We manufacture in China under our own brand name called Make It Real. We also manufacture as a licensee of Authentic Brand Group, that's Juicy Couture, Disney, Nickelodeon, Swarovski Crystal, based out from Austria, as well as others. And we have global distribution in about 75 countries around the world. So hopefully I can share just a little bit about that today. But as I mentioned before, if there's anything that I don't cover or you'd like me to cover afterwards, please feel free to reach out. And that's my story.
Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Isaac. What I want to begin with is something that just crossed my desk not 30 minutes ago. We don't have a lot of drama in our business other than, some of the tariff stuff, but we just got to notice as a company, a wholesale company, that we have 3 days to submit a package in a class action lawsuit against the government. Wholesalers importers are doing what's called the 301 exclusion. I recommend everybody talk to their import department, talk to their freight forwarder, talk to their attorneys. It's something that is a massive class action suit against the government, and it applies, from what I understand, to the whole aggregate of the tariffs. Sometimes they've made exclusions on duty drawbacks or government rebates for the additional tariffs that were charged. This is something different. It's an umbrella of companies, an umbrella of products that's this is from what I understand. It just crossed my desk, but I want to make sure everybody takes it seriously. So talk to your attorney. There's some sort of class action lawsuit that there's a 3-day window that you're allowed to submit through an attorney that you want to be part of it. So please look into that. And the more I know, the more we'll email you and you can keep in touch. So just hot topic right off the press. By show of hands, or does anyone know about this other than me? Did anybody hear about this?
I heard about this from the International Houseware Association.
Okay.
I also sent out an email. They actually have a class action link, I guess, if you want to join their class action. So that's the Houseware show that's in Chicago. It's once a year. If you subscribe to that,
okay.
I got a mass email if you want to join their class action.
Okay.
But I just heard about it last night.
Okay. So yeah, it's please don't just let that slip away. There could be a massive financial reward coming back. Okay.
Eli,
Yeah.
please
Yes.
restate to everybody how they can access it,
Well,
all your wholesalers.
the wholesalers right now, all I know is we're talking to an attorney. We're talking to our attorney of how we apply for it. It's called the 301 exclusion. You should speak to your import specialist. You should speak to whoever's your freight forwarder is or your lawyer. Talk to them immediately and talk about the 301 exclusion and tell them you want to be part of it. That's my advice. And that's all I know right now. But it's a massive class action, and it's against the government. It's a suit against the government that they weren't allowed to do the thought is that they weren't allowed to do it, and they should give the money back. Got it? Yeah. Okay. So, I try to like customize some of these hot topics that's happening in the industry right now through COVID. We're definitely back on somewhat of a normal playing field. I think everybody that I speak to has some sort of optimism about the future, whereas 3-4 months ago, everybody was much more anxious. There is a tremendous amount of what I call a starvation for product in the marketplace, and we'll go over a little bit of some of those opportunities I hope everybody's keying in on. One of the big topics today is what to do with your inventory if you have it. Do you like, even as an entrepreneur myself, do I want to give it to the people that have always been by my side? Do I want to help them, or do I want to have new opportunities come in? So if you have inventory right now, Isaac and I were talking about this before, there's never been a better time to open up a new account. Those buyers who haven't been able to, answer your emails, talk to you, this is a really good time to be in their face and say, I have, X amount of units of this, and they if they're not listening right now, then you might want to go into a different industry. Maybe your product's really wrong, but it's absolutely a here and now opportunity. I hope everybody takes that seriously. We're going to start off with licensing. This is your brand is everything. I'm going to let Isaac start speaking into this. He's got a bunch of different brands and a bunch of different products that do well, and he has had some really strong successes and some failures with his house brand. So if you don't mind, the importance of licensing, Isaac, can you please speak into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm first going to start off with my licensing disaster story, because I think the first license I ever had was probably what I'm going to say is the worst license in the worst license in the history of all licenses. I started when I was 23, and I was looking to distribute for a larger company, and this company was also just slightly larger than mine, just getting into the business. And they had a license, and you're ready for this. They had a license. They had a Paris Hilton arts and crafts license.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if those words go together or belong together. It was an absolute disaster, but that was my first exposure to licensing. And in my mind, it was like, well, this was going back 12 years. She had various different TV shows and whatever it was. And it was just something which, I said, well, what could possibly go wrong? Well, lots went wrong. Besides the obvious that it was completely inappropriate product category match with the licensor. But I think what was really, what it really taught me is there's a tremendous value to having a license and a high profile license, but it absolutely has to be the right fit. Now, one of the things which I think is really important, is really interesting during COVID, what we're seeing is shopping patterns changing, which means more people are shopping online. That's cliche already. I don't have to tell any of you that. Hopefully all of you have meaningful online Amazon strategies, and that the people are shopping online and people are shopping in stores. When they shop in stores, they're in and out much quicker than they ever have been before. And what that means is that people are turning to brands and licenses that they know and are familiar with. So if you have your own brand, which obviously it's tremendously valuable to build up your own brand equity, but one of the best, and I would say the highest values of building up a license, is that you get to piggyback on somebody else's brand equity that they've spent millions, in some cases billions of dollars building over the years, and you get to piggyback on that for a royalty, which anywhere, depending on the license, could be anywhere from 8 to 20%. Now, so when we started our company in 2016, we approached Disney, who I had a relationship with previously. This is our most recent company. And basically we asked them to take a chance on us, and there was no godly reason why they should have said yes. I mean, we paid a minimum guarantee of about $50,000 at the time. but it was which is relatively low for Disney standards. But basically what I told him was, I said, you know, we're going to give it everything that we've got. We're in this for the long term. And, you know, in 3 years, you can ding me for a higher minimum guarantee. And, you know, in many cases, if you have a product category or a product niche, which is not going up against a monster, you really could take advantage of this type of opportunity, especially during this time. Another example is—
Isaac, I just want to cut you off for 1 second. How did you get them? How did you convince them? You make it sound like it was like, you know, that easy. Everyone sitting here today that have wholesale companies, how do they get a Disney license?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the first thing is to get somebody to return your phone call. So it's the right product manager and the right category manager. So that's the first thing. If you're in a very hot category, so if you're in, you know, if you're in apparel and you're trying to get a Disney apparel license, it's going to be probably more difficult with a higher minimum guarantee. But the first thing is, you know, when you're talking about getting a license, the first thing is money talks, right? If you're willing to put up a relatively large minimum guarantee, money talks, and you can probably get almost anybody to return your call. The question is, can you find a category that you have a specialty in that perhaps there's an opportunity to exploit, you know, and then make that presentation. So the first thing is, it's like approaching a retailer. You got to get the right person on the phone. Disney has, you know, however many 25,000 employees, you've got to find the right person. Of course, like I said, if there's anything I can do to help, you know, get anybody to the right person, you can reach out.
That's a very nice offer. That's a very nice offer.
I'm relatively limited to the kid space, but if you know, it's finding the right person, getting the right person to return your call. And again, your offer, the right way to look at a licensor is not that they're holding all the cards. You hold the cards. A licensor without licensees means it's useless. You have to look at it that you're holding the cards as well. And at this point, the relationship with Disney has shifted over to time to the point where now they're asking for phone calls with me. Not that I'm any great shakes in comparison to the top, you know, 10% of their licensees, but they're asking for phone calls trying to sell us on, okay, now you need to license this property and that property, and Mulan is a new movie and this one. And now it's all about that story instead of the other way around. So it's getting your foot in the door, understanding what category you can offer them that they maybe don't already have. And an example of that is when I approached Authentic Brands Group, which is, I think, the third largest licensor in the world right now. They're buying a new company every day. And I approached them and I said, you know, they hold the Juicy Couture license. They bought Juicy Couture from, I don't remember who it was back in the day, maybe. I don't remember who it was, but they bought Juicy Couture. And I said, listen, I'm interested in licensing Juicy Couture. And I was a nobody at this point. This was the first year of our company. And they said, what category do you want? So obviously I was never going to get shoes. Movado was doing watches, and apparel I was never going to get, or tracksuits or anything like that. So I said, well, actually I want to do arts and crafts kits for girls. And they thought I was out of my mind. And I said, well, no, think about it. You know, it was a popular brand coming back. They had just done their collab with Urban Outfitters. And I said, no, think about it. Girls 8 to 12 are buying other Juicy product. I happen to be really good at arts and crafts. Give me a shot. And they took it out. They ran it up the flagpole, and they came back and said, all right, what the heck? You know, are you willing to put down $25,000? And I said, sure. And then we ended up, we're now in our third year of business with them, and it's great.
That's great. That's great. I just want to add one more thing on the ability to get a brand. There's nothing better for a brand to hear from a retailer that suggests you as the licensee. So if you have like a strong relationship and you want to leverage it with a Disney, or if the Walmart buyer or the Costco buyer maybe can write you a letter of recommendation. It may sound simple, but it really does the trick, and you can use that to be able to get a license also.
Absolutely. There's also something else which is going on, which is really fascinating. There's unfortunately a lot of companies going bankrupt right now. And what's happening very quickly, much quicker than it ever did before, is that people are buying up the assets to the brands and then very quickly licensing them out. So, I mean, there's a lot of examples of that. Pier 1 is an example of that. Sharper Image is an example of that. The guys who bought Pier 1 just bought Models. Believe it or not, they bought Models for $3.7 million, okay? The entire portfolio of Models they bought for $3.7 million just last week. And so if anybody here is in apparel, or if anybody here is in sporting goods or anything like that, you could get a Modell's license and the ability to sell on Modells.com for probably nothing right now. Whereas the brand value of the brand, you know, Modell's 24 months ago was an absolute household name and probably valued in, you know, in the tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. So, you know, these are the types of things that are happening. And if you're opportunistic, there's really serious opportunity out there. You just have to make the right call, and there's a lot of noise in the market.
Nice. Nice. Okay, great. Does anybody here tell Molly if you want to ask us questions about licensing? You could type it in, you could raise your hand, you could show your face. We like faces, not always black screens. So if anyone wants to talk, you have a really smart guy here who's done very well in licensing. Do you have any questions for him on this? Molly, just tell us if anyone has anything. Otherwise, I'm going to move topics.
Nope.
Move on.
I feel like I'm selling Aliyot. Going once, going twice. Sold. Okay.
We got
So-
one?
Do we have one? No questions. Okay. So there's a
Someone said, who's good for housewares?
who's good for housewares?
I
That's
guess,
the question.
yeah.
Who's good? I mean, like, I don't know what they mean. Does that mean like what brand should
What
they
category?
get for housewares? You should. Okay. So what I would do for anyone, housewares or any other category, I would walk the floor of all the stores you want to sell. I know it sounds simple, but really, I would walk the floor with my merchandising team, and you don't know how many ideas happen when you just brainstorm and walk the floor. You'll find brands that have absolutely similar to what Isaac said. They don't even think of some categories in their wheelhouse of brands. And I own a few brands, and sometimes people have come to me with an idea of selling stuff with my brand, and I laugh at them, similar to Authentic, and they have a $7-8 million business today in that arena, and that's happened more than once. So walk the floor in housewares, but don't only walk the floor in housewares. Walk the floor in all hard goods, and maybe you can come up with a sleeper brand in your category that doesn't already exist. I recommend that.
That's exactly right. It's all about finding something that's complementary. So an example of a really successful housewares brand, which was successful for a while already, was Martha Stewart, right? So when she got into licensing, it was obviously extremely complementary to what she was already doing, and she was working with Iconics, I think it was a couple of years ago. So that's a really good example. But it's finding people who are not already in the houseware space, but important, meaningful brands that you think about. Probably, ask your wife or ask a woman. What are, if you have a list of 10 brands or whatever it is, what are the most meaningful brands that you would trust to buy? Because most people, honestly, if you ask 95% of consumers, they probably think that Disney manufactures product. 95% of consumers probably believe that Disney makes product, and the reality is, for the most part, they don't make any product. All the product is made by people like us, and so people trust the Disney name, or they trust the Martha Stewart name, or whatever it is, even though they have no clue who's actually manufacturing the product. And that's the goal, is to find those people that have the trustworthy, meaningful brands.
Great. Good. Thank you, Isaac. So
There's two more questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Someone said, is there any contact for Modell's license?
It's REV. The guy's name is Tai, T-A-I. And he's actually looking for licensing. He's looking for licensors right now.
He has to exceed 1% above whatever the fee is to exceed network. We want a 1% fee.
It's Ty Lopez and Alex Mayer are the two guys who just bought it. You can Google it, T-A-I Lopez and Alex Mayer.
That's great.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
And one more question. Someone wrote, if you have multiple brands for the same category, how do you manage both?
Very good question. Don't talk to the brands about the other brands. That's the first thing. We have licenses with Disney and Nickelodeon, and we never talk to one about the other. Don't play one off the other. It's not appreciated. The best thing to do, if the ideal is not to compete for the same shelf space, because very often a retailer is not going to want to give more than a certain amount of shelf space to one company. And this goes with acquisitions also. We've seen it in the toy industry. Jeff could probably relate with me on this, where you see these companies, these private equity companies come in and they buy, they buy 10, 12 companies, thinking that if those 12 companies each had 4 feet or 8 feet into a large retailer, so 12 times 4 equals 48. 12 times 4 doesn't equal 48. It usually equals 12 or 8 by the time they finish cutting it all down. So the best strategy that I would give for that is to try to do market segmentation. So you have one license strategy where you're exclusively, in higher end, and maybe another one where you're in dollar stores, or, the TJ Maxx, Ross, of home goods of the world. Because it really is tough if you're fighting for that same shelf space and you're one company that has multiple brands.
Yep. I'll add one more thing, other than the relationship factor, and you really have to be careful not to cannibalize your own business. And I think there has to be a strategy. Market segmentation is one thing. You definitely have to have a rhyme and a reason for each brand, and you have to be able to stand alone, whether it's different price points that don't hit into each other, whether it's different retailers that don't really play well in the same space. I know, Burlington doesn't like what's in Ross, and TJ's doesn't like what's in Burlington. So that's another way to think about it. But it's just like anything, it's a delicate dance, and do it well. We're gonna go into, because we spent a nice amount of time on licensing. We're gonna go into it's really one big flow of information. The renminbi to the US dollar has dropped tremendously. This has caused a big stir in the marketplace. Prices are going up for the first time in a long time. The pendulum has swung, and it's something that everybody really has to have. You have to have a strategy in place, because margins, unless you're in a very small market where you have the margin built in, this is a game changer. 4% fluctuation, 5% fluctuation in currency is really a very difficult thing for most companies to handle. So, I was talking to Isaac about it, and he has a really good strategy here. So let's hear from Isaac on this.
Yeah, this is not an area that I'm an expert in, but one thing, the first thing is, unless you're actually registered as a company to do business in China, you actually are limited from buying products and from buying and selling in RMB. So you're kind of limited to utilizing the dollar. And what we do with all of our factories is we make them sign on a BOM at the beginning of every year. When we agree on pricing and we agree on a bill of materials, we make them sign that they're going to honor the price for 12 months. And what that does, well, first of all, we have to do that with our retailers anyway, for the most part. But the other thing that it does, it may sound like it's boxing in the factory, but the reality is they have a pretty big upside as well. And this was relevant in 2019. The factories would have actually gained about 4 to 6% margin by signing that deal, because in 2019, the currency went the other way. So, but by doing that, at least you lock in some sense of stability that you're able to guarantee your purchase price for 12 months. And the factory has upside in case it goes one way, and they have a little bit of downside in case it goes the other way. But I strongly recommend that, otherwise you're subject to price fluctuations. Exactly.
It's really smart to hedge it, and I commend you for that. Now you're looking really smart. On the opposite side, when you lock in a price, you don't get the benefit, but you're really not in the finance business. If you're in the consumer product space, you're in that business. So you lock in your margin, and you avoid a lot of the highs and the lows of that. I think everybody should be thinking about that. If anybody wants to plug in a question on how to negotiate, or some of the tactics I've been using, you can easily type in a question. I think that also has a lot to do with the tariff rebates. Outside of the 301 exclusion that we just discussed, there's a lot of new rules that happened as of 9/1. As of September 1st, there are several categories that I happen to have some of them in my categories. I checked with my import department that you should also be looking into that they're doing a drawback on it. So anything that was shipped from 9/1/20 to from 9/1/19, that 1 year, let's call it 8/30/20 back to 9/1/19. There's new exclusions, and I hope everybody's looking into those outside of the 301. Again, your freight forwarder, your lawyer, make sure you're taking this seriously. There is potential money to be redistributed back to you. There's a lot of loopholes. You have to make sure you do everything right. If you have any questions or advice, I'm happy to connect you with someone who's an expert in the field. I can do an email connect. Just email Exceed, and I could try to help you with that. But I want everyone to know that this is an ever-changing thing. You can't be asleep at the wheel. We paid a lot of money and lost a lot of potential profit that we thought we were going to get, and some of it will come back. Please take that seriously.
So Eli, is this money that's going to come back to us? But is this money we already paid that's coming back to us, or is this going forward we don't have to pay the tariff anymore?
No, this is money you paid that will come back to you, Leon. This is money, or they might use it as a credit for future fees or tariffs, but it's money back. It's a drawback.
Mm-hmm. And going forward, does that mean there's no more tariff on these categories, or is there still going to be a tariff?
Like yeah. So whatever the umbrella is, and literally like every week something new comes out. You just have to be really in tune to it. You have to be on top of it. But yes, we already, like my company already stopped paying upcharges as of 9/1 on those categories, and now we're trying to get the money back for the year that we paid the overage. Get it?
Got it.
Got it.
Thank you.
No problem.
There's
and then,
two questions on that.
Sorry,
Someone
what?
said, would you recommend paying for goods in RMB rather than US dollar? And who are you using to get your money back for the tariffs?
So that's a good, let's do the first one. I'm not in the finance business, and I think what Isaac did is the right move. Lock it into the US dollar, because you know what you sell product for. You don't sell product in renminbi. You shouldn't buy product in renminbi, in my view. There might be a strategy, and if there is maybe a first cost business, you might want to look into that. But I absolutely would not do it. That's my take on it. I sell in US dollars. I want to buy in US dollars, and I hope that answers your question. Isaac, do you agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, good. And then what was the second point?
Someone said, who are you using to get your money back for the tariffs? My forwarder said there's a deadline of 9/18.
Okay, so they're talking about the 301 exclusion. That's the, whoever said that, that's the current here and now topic. The other topic I was telling you about is something that's limited to a guarantee money back if you file. So there's two different things going on. I just want to make it clear. The first thing I brought up was the 301 exclusion that covers, that's a class action lawsuit against the government for all tariffs that were above and beyond what the previous rate is. The other topic that I'm telling you about is something that changed within a specific group, that the rule changed, so you should be entitled to get the money back. Not we're fighting the rules that are already in place. Got it? And then the second part is for the money that if you're like, I think it's really complicated. It goes by HTS numbers. You have to check all your HTS numbers against all of the codes that were changed or drawn back on. Everyone should have an import person in their company, and they should review it all the time. They should constantly review it. Secondly, the big 301 exclusion, there's a few things going on that I just heard about, but I can't recommend a lawyer, but there are lawyers that are taking a contingency fee, so you don't have to pay out of pocket. And they'll say, I'll take your whole company's case on right now. And with that, you'll give me 5, 10, 15, 20, depending on how big it is versus how much work they have to do. That's something that it's changing and it's moving, and I might look into that myself. So I haven't made any decisions on that, but that's a legal issue. The other one is a freight forwarder issue. One is a guarantee that they changed it and you should get back what you paid. The other one is a fight against the government through a class action lawsuit that you need an attorney for. I hope everyone understands. If they don't, I'll say it again. Okay.
There's 2 more questions on that if we have time.
Yeah.
Someone said, does the 301 include new products being imported or only past purchases?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I think the genesis of it is the fight with the government, the lawsuit with the government is that they weren't entitled to do that, to charge more than the original tariff. So it's probably going back. There is yeah. Ask your lawyer. What else?
Someone said, can you recommend a lawyer?
I have a whole host of lawyers that are potentially doing this on contingency. Can you please email, whoever's interested, email Exceed. I'm going to do a little research before I recommend, because I don't know who's going to be, the right guy for this, or girl.
Okay, that's it.
So Isaac and I want to talk a little bit about the credit market and what's happening. It's probably the most challenging thing to manage right now is who do you take orders from? Who are you shipping? Who's being approved? Everybody has a different factor or a different insurance company, and really the squeaky wheel gets the grease in this area. You really have to be fighting your factor, fighting your insurance company, and even battling with your retailers to change terms, some of which you may want to ask them for money up front. That has happened where some retailers who haven't gotten the credit will write you a check for a deposit, depending on how much they want the product. But this is a super important topic, and everybody's talking about it. Like, I think, JCPenney, for example, just became a sellable account. If you didn't hear, JCPenney just got saved by their landlords, Brookfield and Simon Properties bailed them out. They put hundreds of millions of dollars back in the business. So, that's a new account that wasn't really financially well, that now is. So you really have to be on top of which retailers are getting funded, which aren't. The Q2 versus Q3 earnings are coming out, and some of the Q3 earnings are much better than Q2. So you have to check. Just because someone got rejected, it doesn't mean that they won't get credit from one week to the other. I've seen credit rejected and then credit approved within a week on some retailers. It's a work in progress, and I'm going to do a little shameless plug right now for our sponsor. The Hedaya Capital Group has helped us as a company, as a wholesale company, get credit on companies that we normally couldn't get credit for. So not everybody, just don't take no as an automatic. It's Isaac. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is not my expertise. Our CFO handles that, but yes, this has just been, as I oversee the sales for the company, and it has been just an ongoing up and down roller coaster. I would say that the classic credit insurance market right now is unbelievably conservative, and getting credit on accounts that we should have no problem getting credit with and that will likely pay is just not even coming through. So it's a constant for us. Like, I'm almost gotten to the point where when I sat down with our CFO and I said to her, listen, I said, just tell me how much money you're willing to lose this year, potentially. Like, what's the downside that we're willing to lose on the upside that we'll be able to sell? So if I can sell $500,000 and we have the potential of writing off $100,000, you know, like it's almost like we're having to make those types of calculations now because the classic credit insurance market is just, it's a nightmare. But I think just as a parenthetical, I think this is a great time to have the conversation. Which are the retailers that are doing really well right now that are not of concern, and that if you're not in them, it's worth looking at it, and which are the ones that are struggling more and more. You know, I think it's probably worthwhile, you know, looking at having that conversation, because ironically, there's a lot of retailers that are doing very well, you know, in this space, and that it's, you know, that is really, really worthwhile looking at. Obviously, I'm not going to tell anybody here anything that they don't know, but I think, you know, just from our perspective, we're looking for the first time at doing business with the Dollar Tree family, Dollar General family of sort of like that whole group of companies that we never really did before. And I think in the toy industry, a lot of companies that never would have done business there are for the very first time. You can walk into their stores and you're starting to see, you know, over the last few years, you're starting to see the Barbies and the Spin Master, you know, Mattels and the Spin Masters and the Hasbros of the world creating entirely new product lines just for those retailers that have now have a combined 25,000 doors. I mean, you can't turn that. It's hard to turn that away. What we're also finding, and this is really important as well, we're selling now to TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Ross, and Home Goods, not just closeouts. We're selling them first line product, not a lot, because we're trying to balance obviously our regular first line retailers, but we're selling them first line products at 25-30% off. They have a huge hunger for product, and the just as an example, Ross has 800 doors. Okay, if we sell 25 of product to Ross or 1,500 pieces of product, that's less than 2 per store, and the odds of anybody ever seeing that are basically none. And also what retailers are willing to do, and they'll deny it, but our retailers are willing to actually give you territory exclusion. So as an example, if you sell Walmart, Ross will tell you that they'll buy product and not put it in their Bentonville stores or their Arkansas stores, so that you don't run the risk of any of those buyers seeing your product. And it's a fascinating sort of concept if you think about it, but the more they're realizing that if they can get first line product that's not closeout, meaning, because by definition, if a closeout product, there's probably something happened there and it didn't sell at first line retailer, but that is happening more and more. So this year alone, we've sold to Home Goods, Ross, not TJ Maxx, Marshalls, but Home Goods and Ross. We've sold them a lot of product that's moved very quickly through their doors, and we have had no bite back at all. So I'm not saying you won't have, but it's certainly something to think about. Obviously, mass market for the most part is doing just fine. The Walmart, Target, Myers of the world are doing just fine. The clubs are doing fine. BJ Sam's, Costco, Price Smart. Where you really struggle is the department stores of the world trying to make heads or tails of Macy's, Kohl's, JCPenney. You know, it's head spinning, and I have no advice there whatsoever. We just don't sell any of them. We can't. We used to, but we can't anymore. You know, it's a tough one. So.
Thank you, Isaac.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How does the online business of the brick and mortar guys play a role in selling goods?
That's a really good question, and it's very timely as well. And shame on me for not bringing it up. What's actually happened is if for those of you that are selling Walmart now, you may have seen interesting. Walmart just laid off a ton of people in their buying department, and part of the reason for that is nothing to do with the fact that Walmart's not doing well. What actually happened is that they just integrated their entire online. There isn't really a .com team anymore. All of the buyers are now buying what's called omni-channel, I guess is the word of the moment. Everybody's doing omni-channel right now because retailers have expectations. When we get our Target reports every week, they ask us to look at what percentage of our business was online, which includes online ordering and in-store pickup. And so retailers more and more have an expectation that brands are going to be focusing on building out their online presence within the retailers, and Target's, when they did their earnings report, one of the things they focused on the most was their online, their uptick in online business, which was something like 250 or 300%, some ungodly number from last year because of COVID. And so more and more retailers are saying, what's the omni-channel strategy? If we have an exclusive, we want it exclusive for our .com. Maybe we launch on the .com, and the buyers are responsible for that purchasing as well. So that's a huge very, very important. And the other thing on online, while we're talking about it, is Authentic Brands Group just had a call. People are looking at Amazon's marketplace, which is, you know, anybody, obviously everybody should be familiar with that, their third-party marketplace. And they're looking at that and saying, how can we replicate that? So Walmart is the biggest one that's working to replicate that. But what's actually really interesting is that, so Walmart is allowing that now. Target is allowing third party on now. It's a much heavier screening process than Amazon. But even the brands themselves are allowing all of their licensees to be selling on the brands on a marketplace as a third party. So as an example, Authentic Brands is going to be allowing licensees to be selling on juicycouture.com and fulfilling it themselves. And same thing with Aeropostale and Judith Lieber and all of their other, you know, brands and that in that space. So it's a hugely important, it's not just Amazon anymore. It's everybody has to get to understand their different customers' online strategies, because it's massive.
Just as a rule of thumb, I find that the number keeps increasing. You know, it used to be if you could do $1 million with the brick and mortar, 10% would be a good number to strive for. So maybe the account should be $1.1 million with their online. It's really going closer now to, you know, from $1 million to $1.2 million, like 20%. So you should use that as a gauge to figure out like how efficient you're being, and hopefully your brick and mortar numbers aren't going down. But assuming that they're staying the same, it should be 20% from your. And of course, it's a rule of thumb, but that's our milestone number that we look for. Any questions on that, Molly? Any questions in the box, or should we move on?
I do.
Jack has
Eli. No, you don't hear me, right?
Jack, I hear you.
You said about these. How are you, Eli?
Excellent.
The exclusions that you're talking about from last year, is there a list somewhere of what they are?
There is. I could send it to Erwin and Molly. I have the categories.
Hold it. That'd be great.
Yeah. Yes. You know, sleepwear is in there. I'm sorry. Jackets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Jackets are in there. I know for a fact. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's.
Yeah. Molly, would you mind?
I'll give up my parking space.
Molly, would you email me for that, and whoever wants that, I could give them the HTS categories that are the drawback categories.
Yes.
Yeah. And then
One more question. Someone said, while talking about calling on customers, what advice can you give with regards to getting a buyer's attention when getting them on the phone and email seems next to impossible?
That is an amazing.
Isaac's got, he gets to everybody. I like Eli, but Isaac has an approach.
Isaac is the man.
I don't know where any of this is coming from, but thank you. Yes. So I actually, you know, it's a good question, and it's one of the.
No, and Isaac, you always told me you could get to any buyer. So tell me
I'm not going to tell you anything anymore. When that's it, we're done. Okay, so there's a bunch of things. Okay, when you're talking to a buyer, so obviously we can't do trade shows anymore, which is a huge part of that. The first thing that I recommend if you want to get into a major is work with the sales rep that the buyer needs. What does that mean? So the buyers in general have a million things to do, and they have no time for anybody, or they don't have no time for the stuff they have to do, let alone for new things. They'll always go, whenever they can, they'll go with what works, right? That's why I always say the value of Disney is that a buyer never got fired for putting a Frozen line on the shelf, but they'll get fired for trying a license that nobody's ever heard of before, buying huge into it and having it fail. So the buyers try what works, and they don't have a lot of time. So my number one, this is what's always worked for me. The first priority, if you can, find a salesperson that the buyer needs. What does it mean a buyer needs a salesperson? Salespeople can do a lot of a buyer's job for them. They can do setup sheets, they can do forms, they can review and point out items that are doing well. Good sales reps are worth their weight in gold. If you're looking to get into Walmart, you're looking to get into Target, find a rep that calls on the category managers that you need and get in with them, because then you're guaranteed to get FaceTime and you're guaranteed to at least get a fair hearing on your product. That's the number one strategy, and it's what I did until you get to the point where you don't need a rep anymore because your brand is so well known that you just simply don't need it. Having a good rep is worth its weight in gold. When you get on the phone with a buyer, always ask for less time than you need. Just say, I need 5 minutes. I can do the whole thing in 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes and we're done. That's number one. Be brief. Buyers hate 30-page PowerPoint presentations. It's a nightmare for them. You ever go in front of a buyer and give them a 30-page PowerPoint? You watch them flip through it in front of you before you even start. Next thing, focus on the differentiation of your product, because they've probably seen 20 different things. What makes yours absolutely, it's cheaper than everybody else. It's a license. It's something that you can't get somewhere else. It's patented. What's different about your product? The next thing, what I always say, if you're in front of a buyer, one of the most important things, make the buyer feel like it's their idea. Really, it's your idea, but if the buyer feels like it's their idea, meaning if you can have this conversation, the buyer says, you know what, it would be really great if you could just do it like that, and say, that's a great idea, and then keep coming back and say, we're doing it your way. That's a huge, that's a huge thing for them. And then the last thing I would recommend is offer them a guaranteed test. Okay, if you're in front of a buyer and you have to make it absolutely no risk for them, offer them a guaranteed test, which means I'll give you whatever, you're the buyer for Target, you're the buyer for Burlington, whatever it is, I'll give you 1,000 pieces, try it. It doesn't sell, we're even, you don't have to pay me, you can give it back, get it back, don't get it back, doesn't matter. I guarantee you the product, you have nothing to worry about, just set me up as a vendor, give me a crack, and I'll make this absolutely worth your while. I've gotten into a lot of retailers by offering them a guaranteed test. Just 1,200 pieces, whatever it costs you, $2 a unit, it's worth the $2,500. 5,000 pieces, however much risk you're willing to take, that often makes a buyer's decision a heck of a lot easier, because then they don't have to answer for something if it doesn't work to their GMM or DMM, whatever the case may be. I hope that answers your question.
Great.
Wow, that was phenomenal. There's nothing I can add to that. Period. End of story. You hit so many good strategies there. One of the things that I really liked about Isaac's business and talking to him was the international industry, the international trade. It's a really hard business to open up. A lot of companies don't even look at it. It's such an important part of branching out, finding retailers in other countries. I have not had a lot of success with it, other than some of the TJX companies that have Canadian and United Kingdom, Europe. So if you don't mind, give us a little insight, Isaac, on how you've been able to do it, some accounts, and yeah, please.
Yes. So, okay, a few things. First of all, so the U.S. is the largest consuming country in the world, which is why everybody wants to sell here, and it's the easiest to, if you're in the United States. But we're not the biggest country, but we buy the most. But one of the best ways, especially during COVID, when a lot of people are struggling and accounts are closing, one of the best ways to diversify your risk is by going international. It's something which was a really important part of what we were trying to do this year, and that we really focused on. So international, I strongly recommend that everybody consider, if you have a viable product in the United States and it sells really well, it's true that there are different international tastes for different things, but what we found is usually 8 times out of 10, a bestseller in country A is going to be a bestseller in country B. So, it's also a very flat world now. It's a lot easier to get in touch with people. It's a lot easier to ship.
How do you find them? How do you find the customers?
Great question. So the number one, probably what represents 70 to 80% of all international sales by American companies is utilizing distributors. So because the language barrier, the international regulations and things like that, most major retailers and countries, unless the brand is big enough, would rather work with a distributor who can supply them domestically to start, and who understands their needs and can fill out their paperwork in their language or whatever it may be. So they would sooner work with a distributor and pay more money than work with an American company who they have to try to onboard and figure out and explain to them all of their procedures. So in all of we have offices, the only countries we go direct in around the world are the United States and the United Kingdom. Those are the only two countries. In the UK, we open an office there to go direct because it's a really big market. It's the largest market in Europe, pretty much, from a consuming standpoint. Other than that, it's all a question of distributors. Now, what's really good about distributors is, for the most part, they need you just as much as you need them. It's not the same thing as working with a retailer, where it's a dogfight to get a single SKU in. Distributors need you. They need good brands. So, and most distributors, frankly, will respond to emails. Most distributors you can find online. A lot of the things that I used to do was, we used to stock trade show websites. Because you can find, like, if you go, for example, and get a list of exhibitors in, just as an example, if you get a list of exhibitors at Japanese Tokyo Toy Fair, you'll find the major Japanese distributors together with contact information. So back in the day, I would stock their websites and get and harvest contact information. For anybody who's in my space, like I said, you're welcome to reach out to me. I can make recommendations if you have questions about particular countries and things like that. I don't know much about apparel distributors, to be totally honest. So for those of you who are in apparel, I recommend finding, you can reach out to Erwin or to the mentoring organization that I'm involved in, the Jewish Entrepreneur, and we'll try to find you people that are in your space that can make recommendations for good distributors in different parts of the world. But working with distributors is challenging because if you sell a product SRP $9.99, right, and you sell it to a retailer for $5, you're going to have to sell it to the distributor for between $2.50 and $3 because they need to make their margin as well. And if you sell it to them for $4, they may buy it, but then they're going to sell it for $8, and your retailer suddenly just went from $9.99 to $15.99, and the odds are it's not going to sell. So when you're working with distributors, realize that you have to throw all of your margin expectation that you're used to working with in the United States out the window. Realize that you're going to sell more, but you're going to sell it at a much lower margin. And so we have a completely different class of margin categories that we have expectations for when we're working with our distributors. To be totally transparent, in my business, it's between 25 and 35 points when we're selling to distributors, and when we're selling to retailers, it's higher than that, 40 to 60, depending on the retailer. And when you're working with distributors, licensing becomes a heck of a lot more complicated, because if you're working on 25, 30 points and you have to pay 10 to 15% in royalties, the margins just, they stop existing. And so that's where you really have to crunch the numbers and make sure that and make sure that it all makes sense, because it very quickly turns into a money losing proposition. The other thing working internationally is be very aware of the testing differences. In the toy business, working internationally means that you're, instead of paying $2,000 a SKU to test, you're going to spend anywhere between $8,000 and $10,000 per SKU to test. When it comes in Europe, the regulations EN 71 parts 1, 2, and 3 become extremely expensive. We just opened for the first time. We just started working in China this year. China has a whole other set of regulations, including inspections and CCC testing, which is what the toy testing in China is called. I would imagine it's the same thing. Frankly, without meaning to put down whatever, it's honestly just a money grab, because for every one of these testing, you've got to pay off a whole bunch of people along the way. So it's just a way for a whole lot of people to make more money while you're basically testing for the same regulations that we already are in the US and the EU. And then also language is very important. Just realize selling in Canada means bilingual. Selling in China means you have to have Chinese labeling, Japanese labeling, things like that. So these are just things to be aware of. There's obviously a lot more, but that's like a high level entree to the market.
I have just one point on that. Is payment direct, is it LC or is it open terms? Like,
so the good news when you're working with distributors, the really good news, the best part of it is that you can ask for 30% deposit and 70% on documents, which basically means you don't have any of the risk of retailers going out.
Okay.
That helps make up for the loss of margin, is that you can ask for payment, because obviously you're not going to go to South America and start chasing people for payment. It's never going to happen.
Okay, great. Eli?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up a document and share screen that's going to show everyone the exclusions. Hang on a second. Can I share screen?
Yes.
I can, right? Share screen. Share screen. Let's see. Can anybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are all the HTS codes. Don't only look at the descriptions. If you want to print that, that's all of the very different than the 301. I'm talking about things that this is a change that was made, and it's you could see it's from a month ago, this report, and it started it's from all shipments from 9/1/19 to 8/30/20. And as of 9/1, the duty changed on it. It's not additional, and you should be able to get the money back. All right, so let's, while I think we're pretty good on time, I want to open up some questions. We have about 5, 7, 10 minutes, if that's all right with you, Isaac.
Want to go back to the screen? Could you take that off?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Got it. Okay.
Hey,
I mean, it's so limited on time, and there's so much we have to go through. But I'd like to get some questions.
Hey, Eli, I had a quick question about your online. You mentioned that you were looking between 10 to 20% of your overall business to, I guess, reflect on what you do online. Does that apply to items that are non-branded, or you think most of your success has been because of the brands that?
You know what? It's a good question. I think it's a general rule of thumb. I wouldn't put a brand as the parameter difference between it. I would put the retail price point as the parameter. The higher the price, the higher the percentage of your business it should be, because it doesn't pay. Burlington and all these other companies are out of the business because their average retail is $11, $12, $13, $14. And it really doesn't pay by the time you ship it and take returns back. It's problematic, and it's a non-starter to do any item that's not really a $25 and above. That's the market research we did. We fell several times. We recalibrated it, and we figured out that $25 is the magic price to be able to ship the customer in 2 or 3 days for free, put it in the price, be able to take back all the returns. And if you don't have a $25 item, create one. Create bundles and packs, maybe 2 seasons worth of tools, or whatever your item is. You have to be creative to get those people $25, and then it should be much more than 20%. It should be 30%. But if you're selling a $6.99 item, then you really can't have and really brand doesn't make a difference here as far as the percentages go. But if you have an item under $10, I'd be shocked if it was close to 20%. And if it is 20%, it means you're not doing enough in the brick and mortar. So that's my take on it.
The other thing I would
Eli.
say online
Yeah.
is that,
No.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
What?
No, I just wanted to, Eli, at the last webinar, you had an idea. I don't know if you mentioned where you said if you went a lower price point, it didn't pay, but if you bundled it to get to that price point, then that was an effective way of selling. Correct? Am I right? What you did? Yeah.
The other comment that I would make on this, and I say this to people all the time in my experience with Amazon. So we don't sell Amazon directly. We sell through a third party. And basically it used to be that, when you're dealing with brick and mortar retailers, it was the high powered people that control everything. And, you had a ton of the control for Walmart and Target, for the toy business, that really Walmart, Target, Amazon is such a huge percentage of it. And so Walmart, Target, you had 2 or 3 people that were in control of who were going to make or break. What's amazing with Amazon is the way I always say it, and I say this in the most complimentary way possible, is that it's the nerds that are going to take over the world. And what I mean by that is that the people who really understand algorithms and search and keywords, it has nothing to do anymore. You could have no clue about the product category, have no experience in it. But if you have these people that are so incredibly good at what they do, that they can take a nothing brand and turn it into a monster on Amazon, not because the brand is high quality, not because it's licensed, not because any of that, but because you're working with the right people who really understand the nerd tech part of it. And if you can find the right partner for that, then, you know, all bets are off, and you could be better than anybody else, even people who have, you know, 10 years more experience than you.
Well said. Any other questions there, Molly?
Someone said, do you have another HTS list besides apparel?
That's the one I got from you. You have to talk to your freight forwarder really to find out what HTS codes you have, and then look it up in the consumer product space that I'm in. You really have to call your customs broker and the people that you deal with.
Someone said, have you ever used your Amazon listing to prove to retailers that it sells?
Great question. So the answer to that is yes. Not in the sense that I prove to retailer that my brand works because it works on Amazon, because retailers are getting that every day from people who are looking to move from Amazon into the brick and mortar world. However, it really depends on the category and what your rankings are. So if you're in the top 1,000 or 2,000 of any particular category, that's an incredible story to tell. But what I find is that retailers are asking in almost every meeting that we're having now, retailers are asking, what are your strongest e-commerce SKUs? And because, you know, very often now people are launching things online even before they get, you know, to brick and mortar. So people feel like they can get their finger on the pulse of what's strong just based on what's online. So the answer is yes. It's not a slam dunk, but it depends how high the rankings are, and definitely use it as a proving ground for your own brand and to help rank products that you're presenting to retailers who have limited space.
You know, we also have e-com special webinars with experts that only do that, just so everyone knows, if anyone didn't know that already.
In fact, we're doing one, we were supposed to be doing one this week, but with Joey Zolt and his team, but Joey's wife was expecting, so probably be doing right after the holiday, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Molly, anything else, or should we wrap it up?
One more question. Do you have an in-house Amazon team? This is for Isaac.
No, so I work with a third party who has an entire team, and basically, so there's two ways to go here. There's three ways to go. You can either sell to Amazon, which is, and I'm not an Amazon specialist, so I'm just saying this is the research that we did for our brand. You can either sell to Amazon. The huge risk that you run there is that you're not in control of the prices anymore. And if you sell to Amazon directly and they decide that they want to take your $10 item and sell it for $3, they can, and there's nothing you can do about it that could destroy your other retailers. You can run your own FBA account in-house. We don't do that because I would have to hire the talent to do that. You really want to do that right. Or you can sell to a third party, which is what we do. And it took us a long time. We went through a bunch before we found one that we were really happy with, and I'm happy to recommend them to whoever, you know, wants. But we found, and basically what that does, the downside of it is that we're not making full margin. The upside of it has massively overwhelmed that, in the sense, number one, they buy the product from me, so I have no risk of inventory. They buy everything from China and domestically, so I have zero inventory risk on it whatsoever, which is huge. The second thing, which is really important, is that they spend all the money on AdWords and all of that themselves. So I'm not actually spending a penny on AdWords or any of that. I give them enough margin that they can do it and still make money, but I'm not spending anything on AdWords. I'm no investment in it whatsoever. They're doing all of it. And the third thing is that they know what the heck they're doing. I know nothing about what I'm doing. So sure, anybody can put products up on FBA and even get nice pictures up. But at the end of the day, it's all about the back end work and the fulfillment, and they're logistics experts, they're keyword experts, they have the money to buy my products in advance, pay, and for me, that's been an absolute game changer for us.
Don't ever think that wholesale and e-com is the same. You're selling a product, two completely different operations, two completely different ways of reaching the customer. It's night and day. I have a separate team that does e-com all day with a few of my brands, and it's a completely different space. Do not think wholesale and e-com is the same thing. You're not maximizing your e-com if you don't have your own team and your own logistics and like he said, brains, nerds, whatever you want to call them, the people that really get the algorithms, the people that understand it's not the same thing. It's easier for everyone here to be able to import a product to China, sell it to Walmart, make $1 million, and next. Over there, you could lose your shirt if you're not doing it properly, and you don't have the right people running that company. I've seen it happen. Bob,
Yes.
what's your question? What's your question? I saw you want a question.
No, it's just a comment. If I can have 25 seconds, I'd just like to say this is as a result of all the businesses and assets I own throughout the world, I'm on Zoom all during the day and in the evenings. And this is one of the most informative, it's the first time I'm on your webinar. It's one of the most informative lectures I've ever heard. And I graduated Columbia in 1969 with an MBA and skipped college. I promise you, this is like 3 months of being in the Graduate School of Business at Columbia. I promise you, this is incredible. I also want to also say, besides what I'll talk to you about, Jackie Bennett. He's one of the few people of my generation who lives by integrity and his word. And as far as you, Eli, I want to tell you, I used to ask your mother if I could adopt you because I have only one son. And she used to tell me no, but I'm taking the liberty of telling you how proud I am of you. I cannot believe how you've grown, matured, and become so able and competent. And I'm so
I love you, Bob.
Thank you, everybody
Love you,
else.
Bob.
For giving me
Thank
this
you so much, Bob. Love you.
Thanks for coming, Bob. Great seeing you.
Thanks for signing on,
Thank you.
guys. Email anything you need. We'll try to help you guys. Good luck. Good
All right,
luck.
so we're good? Okay,
Say
so
hi to
one thing
Laura.
before we
Tell
sign off-
Laura I say hello.
Thank you. I will, Erwin.
So,
Thanks so much, Erwin.
Before we sign off, just a couple things. Number one, first, Eli's been like really championing this thing the last 4 or 5 months. I love you, Eli. Isaac Wolman, dear friend, without a doubt, thanks for today. You did incredible. I didn't doubt it a minute. And he's a man of really that he's 24/7 chesed and has really been a great friend over the last couple of years. So we're sending out a survey. Please fill it out. We're going to have a couple more webinars in the next couple of weeks for e-com, branding, the service. We're doing a thing, the future of work, the workplace. So give us your response. We love your feedback. Molly will take care of it. We'll send it back to you. And again, everybody, while it's a day before, I want to wish everybody, God willing, that this year is going to be a great year. They're going to break out. The world's going to be safe, and everybody's going to be back to having a good time. So thanks, everybody, for coming
Thanks,
on
Mike.
board.
What's your secret? What's your secret to such great hair, Erwin? What's your secret?
I just
How
want
do
to
you have
tell
such great
Isaac
hair?
Wolman how
Right.
wonderful his informative information was today. It was so comprehensive. And I wish I was in wholesale. I only buy businesses. They're in wholesale, but I don't get involved in those operations. But I give you my word. This was so informative. I could listen to this all day long because I love learning every day. Thank you, guys. God bless you. Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank you.
Love you,
Thank
Bob.
you.